She was terrified of her cold millionaire husband until she saw how far he'd go for her. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. Lila Carter had thought she understood fear until the glass doors of the 70-floor penthouse slid shut behind her, sealing her inside a world that didn't feel like hers. The city glittered below like an overturned sky, thousands of lights breathing against the darkness, but in here, everything was still. Too still. Adrian Hale, the man she had been forced to marry only hours earlier, stood a few feet away. Unmoving, unreadable, his presence colder than the white LED lights humming above them. He didn't look at her the way a husband would. He looked at her the way someone might look at a stranger who had entered the wrong room. "We won't interfere with each other," he said, his voice flat, steady, emotionless. The words sliced through her chest more cleanly than any insult could. No wedding warmth, no celebration, no whispered promises. Just a contract sealed under the pressure of her father's collapsing company and a man who didn't want her but needed the deal. Lila forced a polite smile that crumbled almost instantly. Her heart pounded as if the penthouse itself were shrinking around her. She told herself not to cry, not tonight, not in front of him, but the coldness in his eyes made breathing feel like a chore. She stood there, small and uncertain in her pale wedding dress, realizing that for the first time she truly didn't know what waited for her on the other side of the night. Adrian turned and walked deeper into the glass labyrinth without another word. She followed slowly, her footsteps echoing against the marble floor. Every wall was transparent, every reflection sharp. The entire place looked like a museum, immaculate, spotless, untouched by human warmth. No framed photos, no clutter, no soft edges. Just steel glass and silence. The elevator doors closed behind them with a soft chime that sounded too final. Adrian didn't look back. "Your room is to the left," he said, pointing vaguely down a long hallway, bathed in cool blue light. "Mine is on the opposite end." Lila nodded even though her throat was tight. She tried again to speak. "Thank you for bringing me here." He only dipped his chin, a gesture barely qualifying as acknowledgement. She watched him take off his suit jacket, place it neatly over the back of a chair, and loosen his tie. For a moment, just a moment, she thought she saw exhaustion flicker across his features, the slightest tremor in his hand, the faint shadow under his eyes, but it vanished the instant he noticed her watching. "I have work to finish," he murmured. "You won't be disturbed." He walked down the opposite hallway steps, sure and silent, leaving her alone in a space that felt too clean to breathe in. Lila entered her assigned room and closed the door gently, almost afraid it would shatter like the illusions she'd had about marriage. The room was enormous, bigger than her entire apartment growing up, with floor-to-ceiling glass walls showing the endless sprawl of the city. She should have been amazed. Instead, she felt horribly exposed, as if 1,000 unseen eyes could be watching her from below. She changed out of the wedding dress with trembling fingers, folded it neatly on a chair, and sat on the edge of her bed. Her reflection in the glass, small, tired, frightened, stared back at her. She barely recognized the girl looking back. This wasn't a home. It wasn't even a safe place. It was a cage, a beautiful, glittering cage. The silence pressed in on her until she couldn't stand it. She stood, opened her door, and stepped into the hallway. Maybe she could find a light switch or something less sterile than the empty room. That's when she paused. A sound drifted down the hallway from the east wing, the side Adrian had gone to. A sharp, strained sound. A cough, but not the casual kind. It was deep, rough, pulled out of someone in pain. It went on too long. It echoed off the glass walls and hit her spine like ice. "Adrian," she whispered. No answer. She stepped closer, barefoot on the cold floor. The cough came again, followed by a dull metallic clatter like something falling. Lila froze at the corner of the hallway, her breath tight. She raised a hand to knock, or maybe to say something, but before she could decide, the sound abruptly stopped. The penthouse returned to its unnatural stillness, as if nothing had ever happened. Lila waited, heart stuttering, but the silence remained absolute. She forced herself to turn away and walk back toward her room, though every instinct screamed that something was wrong, terribly wrong with the man she had married. Just as she reached her door, she glanced over her shoulder. The hallway where Adrian had disappeared was empty, impossibly empty, and yet the echo of that strained cough still clung to the walls like a warning she didn't yet understand. Morning light spilled across the room in a soft gold wash, but Lila didn't feel warm. She felt exposed. The entire east-facing wall of her bedroom was glass, turning the rising sun into a spotlight aimed directly at her. It was beautiful, terrifyingly beautiful. She sat up slowly, clutching the blanket to her chest, aware of how small she looked against the vast city stretching beneath her feet. Her first waking thought wasn't of the wedding, or Adrian's coldness. It was the sound she'd heard last night. That strangled cough, the metallic clatter, the way silence swallowed everything afterward. Lila slipped out of bed, walked to the glass, and pressed her palm to the cool surface. A faint tremor ran through her. This place didn't feel lived in. It felt monitored, controlled, designed by someone who didn't expect guests, let alone a wife. She stepped into the hallway, trying to steady her breathing. "Good morning, Mrs. Hale." Lila jumped. A smooth female voice vibrated through hidden speakers, calm and eerily emotionless. What?" she stammered. "I am Hera, Household Environment Regulation Assistant. Your current access clearance is level B. If you require assistance, please speak." An AI. Of course. Adrian Hale was a tech mogul. It made sense he'd have an artificial intelligence managing his home. But the idea that the penthouse had already scanned her, learned her schedule, woke with her and unnerved her. "Can you not track me?" Lila asked quietly. "Tracking is essential for safety and system efficiency," Hera replied. Lila swallowed. Right. She walked toward the kitchen, her reflection ghosting in every wall she passed. The penthouse stretched out like a glass cathedral, silent, echoing, impossibly clean. She couldn't imagine Adrian laughing in it. She couldn't imagine anyone living here. The kitchen was sleek and metallic with no sign of real use. No crumbs, no dishes, no smells. Hera activated lights as she stepped in. "Preparing breakfast." "No way I can do it," Lila said. "Your biometric scans from last night indicate elevated heart rate, disrupted sleep, and lingering fever. Menu recommendation, nutritious light meal." A refrigerated unit slid open on its own. Lila forced a breath. "Just stop? Okay. Please." Hera fell silent. The lights dimmed slightly, as if the AI were stepping back. She tried to pour herself a glass of water, but her hands were shaking too much. After a few sips, she walked along the hallway again, taking in the sections she didn't see last night. Several doors blinked red as she approached. "Access denied," Hera repeated. A third of the penthouse, especially the east wing, was locked behind biometric seals. She didn't need Hera to tell her who they belonged to. Adrian. The thought of him sent a complicated shiver through her. He hadn't appeared yet, but she felt his presence everywhere. In the silence, in the way the lights brightened just enough for her to walk without stumbling, in the way the system responded so smoothly to him, but resisted her. She found the elevator near the entrance and tried placing her hand on the panel. A sharp beep cut through the air. "Access denied. Thang mai den ringcha Mr. Hale," Hera informed her. "Of course it is," Lila muttered. She wasn't trapped, she told herself. She could call security, call anyone. But deep down she knew she wouldn't. Not yet. Not until she understood what exactly she had been married into. A soft, mechanical hum sounded behind her. She turned sharply. 2 tall security officers stood outside the glass threshold to the private lobby. They wore black suits, earpieces, and identical unreadable expressions. "Good morning, Mrs. Hale," one said with a slight bow. She stiffened. "Do you guard the penthouse? We ensure the safety of Mr. Hale." The unspoken second half hung in the air, and anyone connected to him. Lila felt the weight of their stares even after she walked away. She tried to eat her breakfast but couldn't finish. Every sound in the apartment startled her, the whir of climate control, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the faint buzz of the automated blinds. She felt watched, cataloged, analyzed. She wondered where Adrian was. As if summoned by the thought, Hera announced Mr. Hale departed at 4:12 a.m. Lila blinked. That was before dawn, before she woke, before the penthouse fully lit. What had he been doing? Working meeting someone? Or was it connected to the cough she'd heard? She rubbed her arms uneasy. Later, she wandered toward her room again, hoping a shower would help her shake off the tension. As she stepped into the hallway, she felt something. The air shifted. She looked back. A shadow, tall, unmoving, stood at the far end of the corridor. A figure. A person. Her heart seized. "Adrian," she whispered. The shadow didn't respond. She blinked, taking a step forward. The figure vanished. It didn't walk away. It didn't turn. It simply disappeared. "Hera," she called out shakily. "Is someone else here?" No living presence detected Mrs. Hale. Lila felt the hairs on her arms rise. She knew what she saw, or thought she saw. And yet Hera denied it. Was the glass reflecting something? Was she imagining it? She backed away slowly, pulse thudding, but the day wasn't done with her fear. That night, long after she had retreated to her room and forced herself to lie down, she heard it again, soft at first, barely a sound. Then clearer, the metallic clang of something falling. It came from the east wing, where the locked doors were, where Adrian disappeared last night. Lila stood, her heart pounding, and stepped into the hallway. The light flickered once. The air felt colder. She approached the corridor inch by inch. A thin line of blue light shone from under the crack of one sealed door. Then abruptly, all the hallway lights went out. Pitch black. Hera's voice vibrated through the darkness, restricted area. "Mrs. Hale, return to your room." Lila spun around, her breath caught in her throat, because in the reflection of the glass beside her she saw it. A man standing directly behind her. But when she whipped around, no one was there. Lila woke with a start, breath catching as though something cold had settled over her chest. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. Then the glass walls around her came into focus, city lights blinking faintly at dawn, and the memory of last night's reflection flashed through her mind, the figure behind her that wasn't really there. Or was it? She pressed her fingers to her temples. Maybe it had been exhaustion. Maybe fear. Maybe the penthouse itself, with its endless reflections, was playing tricks on her senses. But the unease wouldn't leave her. She wrapped her arms around herself and stepped out of the room, her bare feet brushing the icy marble. The penthouse felt colder today, maybe because she was looking at it differently now. Every surface, every light, every silent panel, she didn't just see elegance anymore. She saw surveillance, secrets, shadows. Hera hummed quietly overhead, a soft electric purr that followed her down the hallway. "Good morning, Mrs. Hale. Your temperature is slightly elevated. Shall I prepare a warm beverage?" "No," Lila whispered, her voice barely there. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. Her head felt heavy, her body aching, throat scratchy. She must have caught a cold from sleeping too close to the glass wall. Still, she pushed herself toward the kitchen, determined not to let this place swallow her whole. By the time she reached it, the room was already lit. Too lit. Hera had adjusted the brightness before she entered. Something about that made her stomach churn. She poured water into a glass, but her hands were trembling. When she lifted it to her lips, her vision swayed for a second. She reached for the counter, gripping the edge. "Mrs. Hale, you appear unwell," Hera said. "Should I alert?" "No," Lila repeated, harsher this time. "Please stop watching me." Silence fell again. She felt watched anyway. She staggered out of the kitchen, determined to find a blanket or warmer clothes. The cold in the penthouse seeped into her bones. She shivered her way down the hallway just as Adrian stepped out of the shadows of the east wing. She froze. He looked different this morning, or maybe she was seeing him clearly for the first time. His usually perfect hair was slightly disheveled. The collar of his shirt wasn't fully buttoned. Dark circles pooled beneath his eyes as though he hadn't slept a minute. There was a faint tightness to his jaw, a strain in his posture. When his gaze landed on her, something in his expression cracked. "You're sick," he said quietly, striding toward her. "I'm fine." The words slipped out, weak and unconvincing. Adrian reached her before she could take another step. His hand caught her elbow just as her knees wobbled. She gasped softly, surprised at the warmth of his touch despite the chill in the air. "You're burning up," he murmured. She should have pulled away. She should have been afraid of the man who'd barely spoken to her, who lived behind locked doors and silent alarms. But right now her head was spinning, and Adrian's grip was the only thing keeping her upright. He guided her gently, carefully towards her room. "Sit, I'll get the doctor." "No, I don't need." But Adrian was already reaching for the bedside console, tapping a sequence of commands. A soft chime echoed. "Dr. Patel, who will arrive in 10 minutes, Hira announced. Lila blinked at Adrian. "You don't have to do this." He didn't answer. Instead, he found a blanket, wrapped it around her shoulders, then adjusted the room temperature, manually ignoring Hira entirely. His movements were efficient yet gentle. He placed a cool cloth against her forehead, then another under her wrists. His touch was strangely soft for someone whose presence felt so hard. "You shouldn't have slept near the glass," he murmured almost to himself. "I didn't realize it would be so cold." "It always is." His voice dipped, a flicker of something pained crossing his face before he masked it. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. The cold air around her seemed to soften under his attention, but before she could speak, a sharp throb of pain crossed his features. His hand drifted instinctively toward his ribs, quickly, subconsciously. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "I'm fine." The answer was too quick. He straightened, but she'd already seen it. The strain, the stiffness, the pain he tried so desperately to hide. Dr. Patel arrived soon after, bustling into the room with calm professionalism. He checked Lila's temperature, her pulse, her breathing. Nothing alarming, just a cold. "You need rest and warmth. The penthouse can be unforgiving." Lila nodded, but her gaze kept drifting to Adrian. The doctor followed her eyes. Something unreadable flickered in his expression. Then, in a quiet voice only she could hear, he asked, "Has he been sleeping?" Lila's brows nodded. "I don't know." The doctor sighed. "He should, but he won't." Adrian shot him a sharp look. The doctor fell silent. When he left, Adrian remained by the bed, as though reluctant to leave her alone. He reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers were steady, but just barely. "Don't worry about me," he said quietly. She met his eyes. "Why do you think I'm not worried?" His breath caught almost imperceptibly. He stood so still she wasn't sure he was breathing. And in that stillness she saw the truth behind the ice. He wasn't cold, he was afraid. Afraid of letting her close. Afraid of letting her see. Afraid she might touch a wound deeper than anything physical. Before she could speak, he stepped back, retreating into that quiet distance he clung to like a shield. "Rest," he said. "I'll be nearby." He turned to leave, but just before he reached the door, he stiffened. A low, ragged cough tore from his chest, the same sound she'd heard the night before. He pressed a hand to his ribs, head bowing slightly. "Adrian," she breathed. He didn't answer, but she saw the truth in the tremor of his fingers. He was hurting, more than she had realized. He straightened slowly, forcing himself into composure. "Get some sleep," he said, voice tight. "I'll handle everything else." And then he slipped into the shadowed hallway, disappearing into the cold glass silence, leaving Lila with more questions than she could bear. Lila woke to an unnatural quiet, the kind that didn't feel peaceful, but stage-like silence had been placed carefully over the penthouse to keep something hidden. Her fever had faded, but her mind hadn't. The image of Adrian leaning against the hallway wall last night, clutching his chest, replayed over and over. She stepped out of her room and scanned the hallway. No traces, no signs anyone had been there at all. Even the small scuff marks she thought she'd seen on the floor seemed to have been wiped away. Someone had cleaned up, or something had. The thought unsettled her more than it should have. She moved toward the living area. The penthouse looked pristine as always, but today she noticed things she hadn't before. Coffee stains hastily wiped from the kitchen island, a half-dry drop on the marble floor, and a stack of files on the glass table that hadn't been there the night before. She approached slowly. Screens lit up as she neared them, sensing her presence. A map of the city blinked with several red points of interest. Lines of code crawled across another screen, updating in real time. A third displayed medical data, heart rate, blood oxygen, something she didn't recognize. Her stomach twisted. She wasn't living with a cold, emotionless businessman. Adrian was tracking something, or someone. Mr. Hale departed monitored areas at 4:05 a.m. Hera announced calmly. Lila's head snapped up. What do you mean, monitored areas? Certain sections of the residence are not under my observation. Which ones? She didn't have to ask. She already knew. She followed the long hallway toward the east wing, heart hammering. The doors blended seamlessly into the glass walls, impossible to distinguish at a glance. But now that she was looking, she noticed faint outlines, thin seams running vertically, subtle red sensors glowing when she approached. She reached the door she'd heard sounds from before. The panel blinked. Access level 0 required. Hera Lila whispered, throat tight. What is in this room? Insufficient clearance. Of course. She pressed her hand to the scanner anyway. The panel flashed red and emitted a sharp denial beep. Lila stepped back, frustration knotting her chest. She didn't want to snoop, she wasn't that kind of person, but she couldn't forget Adrian collapsing against the wall, couldn't forget the cough, the pain, the way he hid everything, like he was protecting her from more than she could imagine. She turned away from the locked door and moved to the living room again. Her hand brushed against the drawer under the central console. It wasn't locked. Inside were medical supplies, bandages, alcohol wipes, antiseptic, 40 milligram painkillers, and a syringe packet half torn open. Not old, not dusty, recently used. Her breath hitched. Adrian had been treating something. Alone. She set the packet down with shaking fingers, unable to stop the realization forming in her chest. He wasn't cold because he didn't care. He was cold because he was hiding something. Footsteps sounded behind her. She jerked upright. Adrian stood at the edge of the hallway, still in yesterday's clothes, his tie-missing shirt slightly wrinkled. His hair was damp as though he'd just showered, but his face looked drawn, tired, paler than she had ever seen. He saw her holding the medical supplies and froze. For one heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Then he crossed the room and gently took the packet from her hands, placing it back in the drawer with precision, as though the world might fall apart if he didn't arrange it properly. You should be resting, he said, voice just even but thinner than usual. You were hurt, she whispered. His eyes flickered away. It's nothing. It didn't sound like nothing, she said, her voice trembling. Last night I heard you. He stiffened, his jaw clenched. Lila, he said quietly, there are things I can't explain. Because you don't trust me, she asked. He looked at her sharply, pain flashing across his expression, visible for barely a second before it was buried again. It's not that. Then what? Lila stepped closer. What's in that room? Why are you always in pain? What happened to you? Adrian turned away, shoulders rigid. You shouldn't have gone near the east wing, and you shouldn't be suffering alone. She shot back, surprising herself. Adrian inhaled sharply, like her words hit deeper than she intended. He moved toward the floor-to-ceiling window, bracing one hand against the glass. The light outlined the subtle tremor in his fingers. She followed him slowly. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, rough at the edges. 2 years ago, I was targeted. Her breath stilled. It was meant to kill me. He touched his ribs absently, the place she'd seen him clutch. It didn't, not completely. Adrian. He didn't turn, but she saw the tension in his shoulders, the grief, the fear. They still haven't been caught, he said. And as long as they're out there, people around me are not safe. The truth slammed into her. That's why you live like this, Lila whispered. Locked rooms, surveillance, guards, the pain, the secrecy. He closed his eyes. And why you keep your distance, she added softly. Not because you don't feel anything, but because you feel too much. That made him turn to her eyes, a dark expression unguarded for the first time. Lila, he murmured, you don't understand what comes for the people I care about. Then let me understand. His breath caught. For a moment, neither moved. Then, too fast for her to react, the lights flickered. The floor vibrated faintly. Hera's voice sliced through the air, unidentified movement detected on level 68. Adrian's expression hardened instantly. The fragile moment vanished, replaced by a fierce, controlled terror. They found us, he whispered. And before Lila could ask who, Adrian grabbed her hand tight protective and pulled her close as the penthouse lights flashed red. The alarm lights bled red across the marble floors, flashing in a steady, dreadful rhythm. Lila's pulse thudded against her ribs as Adrian pulled her behind him, shielding her from the hallway as if danger were already at their doorstep. Stay close to me, he murmured, not cold, not distant, but terrified in a way she had never heard before. Hera's voice crackled overhead, distorted. Unidentified movement, level 68, movement error. The speakers fizzed out. Adrian cursed under his breath. They're inside the building. Lila's throat tightened. She didn't know who they were, but she knew enough to be afraid. Whatever haunted Adrian's past had finally caught up to him, caught up to them. He ushered her toward the living room, scanning every shadow with sharp, trained eyes. The penthouse, once too silent and too clean, now felt like a glass coffin, vulnerable from every angle. Adrian Lila whispered, "Tell me what's happening." "Not now." His voice was clipped. "We need to secure the floor first." He tapped a panel embedded in the wall. The penthouse lights dimmed. Shutters slid across some of the windows, but only some. A few shutters sparked mid-close, stuck halfway. System interference detected. Hera crackled. Adrian's jaw tightened. They're hacking the building. Before Lila could speak, something flickered past the window. A small drone gliding along the outside of the glass, its lens focusing inward. It hovered, scanning. Lila sucked in a sharp breath. Adrian grabbed her wrist and pulled her behind a column. "Don't move." The drone paused for a long, terrifying second. Then the lights of its sensor blinked, and it zipped upward toward a higher floor. When Adrian finally released her wrist, her skin still tingled from the urgency of his grip. "We need to get you someplace safe," he said. "Now." But as soon as they reached the entry foyer, the penthouse elevator chimed once sharply, as if someone had forced it to respond. Lila froze. "Someone's coming up." "No," Adrian said, "someone already did." The elevator screen flickered. Instead of the usual floor display, a distorted message blinked. "Override by external user." The doors began to part. Adrian shoved Lila behind him again, his posture shifting alert, ready expression cold as steel. But before anything stepped out, the elevator lights went dark. The doors jammed halfway, stopping. Adrian exhaled slowly. "Backup protocol. They're trying to get through." He turned to her. "We're going to the safe corridor. Stay close." He led her to a section of wall that looked perfectly seamless until he pressed his palm against a hidden sensor. Glass panels rotated open, revealing a narrow hallway lit in pale white. "This way." Lila stayed at his heels, her heart pounding. The corridor looked nothing like the penthouse, no luxury, no shine, just concrete steel and security-grade lights. "Adrian," she whispered, "this is all because of you, isn't it?" He didn't answer, but he didn't have to. When they reached a fortified door, Adrian scanned his fingerprint. It opened into a small panic room, sterile, windowless, built like a bunker. 2 security guards were already there. "Mr. Hale," one said urgently. "The intruder breached the 59th floor." "Seal this room," Adrian ordered. "Keep her inside." Lila grabbed his arm. "No, Adrian, please don't leave me here alone. You'll be safe. You're hurt. You can't—" "I'm fine," he snapped too harshly, but the tremor in his hand betrayed him. His voice softened. "I can't let them get to you." She shook her head, tears rising. "Then stay. Let them come. You don't have to do everything alone." He cupped her face, surprising them both. "Yes, I do." And then the panic room walls vibrated violently, a metallic boom echoing through the corridor. The guards stiffened. "They're trying to breach the floor." "Adrian!" Lila's breath broke. "Please stay." He hesitated agonizingly, thumb brushing her cheek. Another thunderous thud shook the bunker. Adrian turned to the guards. "Lock it. Now." "No." Lila grabbed his hand, gripping hard. He leaned close, pressing his forehead lightly to hers, a brief, desperate touch. "If anything happened to you, Lila, if they took you—" "I wouldn't survive it." Her breath caught. Then with a final look, a look filled with everything he wouldn't say, he slipped out. The door slammed shut between them. Lila pounded on it. Adrian ate a muffled crash, cut her off, followed by the unmistakable sound of fighting. Heavy impacts, a grunt, something metal clattering across the floor, a gasp of pain. Not her voice. His. "Please," she whispered against the door, trembling uncontrollably. "Come back, please come back." The guards tried to keep her back, but she strained against them, every sound slicing her open. A minute passed, 2, then silence. A scraping sound, slow, draining. Footsteps approached the door, dragging uneven like the person behind them was barely standing. Lila's heart almost stopped. The door unlocked with a click. When it opened, Adrian stood there, drenched in sweat. Blood streaked down one shoulder, breathing ragged. Behind him, a masked intruder lay unconscious on the floor. Adrian swayed. Lila rushed forward just as his knees buckled. His hand reached for her, barely catching her shoulder, before he collapsed into her arms. He tried to speak, only managing a faint whisper as his head rested against her. "Told you. As long as you're safe." And then he went limp. Lila sank to the ground with him, her fingers trembling against his face, tears already blurring her vision. She didn't even try to wipe them away. She just held him, terrified she might lose the only man she had ever truly feared, and the one she was now terrified to live without. The moment Adrian lost consciousness in her arms, something inside Lila hardened fear, yes, but also a fierce resolve she hadn't known she was capable of. The guards carried him back through the hidden corridor, and she stayed beside him every step of the way, refusing to let go of his hand, even when it trembled faintly in hers. They laid him on the medical bed inside room 17. The sterile lights flickered on overhead, illuminating the truth Adrian had worked so hard to hide. Machines, monitors, medical-grade equipment, a cart filled with medications she didn't recognize, a heart rate screen already spiking with irregular patterns. Her throat tightened. "Call Dr. Patel," one of the guards said. "He's already en route," the other replied. Lila took a shaky breath. "Is he going to be okay?" One guard hesitated. "He's been pushing himself beyond limit for months." Her stomach twisted. Pushing himself. How neither guard answered. They didn't need to. Her eyes drifted across the scattered syringes, the newly opened bandages, the medical notes pinned on the digital board, nerve damage, muscle spasms, post-trauma episodes. Adrian hadn't been cold. He had been hurting. The door slid open and Dr. Patel rushed inside. "Step back, Mrs. Hale." "No," she said, her voice trembling but unyielding. "I'm staying." The doctor briefly met her gaze, something softening in his expression before he nodded. "Then stand here. Don't touch anything unless I tell you." He examined the wound on Adrian's shoulder, then the bruising along his ribs. "Serious strain," he murmured. The old injury flared. Again. Lila felt her knees weaken. What old injury, doctor? Patel looked at her, weighing the moment. 2 years ago, there was an attempt on his life. A car bomb. He survived, but not without consequences. She swallowed hard. "He told me some of it." The doctor nodded. "He didn't tell you all of it." He adjusted the monitor and lines danced across the screen. Adrian winced, though he remained unconscious. The sight tore at her. "What else?" she whispered. Dr. Patel hesitated. His heart took significant damage. The surgery saved his life, but not completely. He's been living on borrowed strength ever since. The pain you heard, it never went away. Lila pressed a hand to her mouth, trying not to cry. He never said anything. He wouldn't. Adrian Hale would rather bleed in the dark than let anyone see him vulnerable. And he had been doing exactly that. The doctor applied an oxygen mask over Adrian's mouth and nose, his voice softening. "He cares about you, Mrs. Hale. That much is obvious." Her eyes blurred. "If he cared so much, why keep pushing me away? Because the closer you get," Dr. Patel said gently, "the more he risks losing everything." Lila didn't fully understand. Not yet, but she knew enough to feel her heart breaking for him. After stabilizing Adrian and giving strict instructions to the guards, the doctor stepped aside. "He'll wake soon. Talk to him. But don't let him exert himself. His body can't afford it." When the room emptied, Lila sat on the edge of the bed, watching his chest rise and fall under the soft glow of the monitors. She reached out and brushed her fingers against his hair, hesitant, tender. Almost immediately, Adrian stirred. His eyes opened slowly, heavy with pain and exhaustion. When he saw her, confusion flickered, then panic. "Lila, why are you here? You should have left. You're not safe." She tightened her hold on his hand. "I'm not leaving you." His breath caught. "You don't understand what they'll do if they know you mean anything to me." Her chest tightened. "Then help me understand." He turned his head away, jaw clenched. "You're better off not knowing." Adrian, her voice broke. Last night I heard you. I saw you collapse. I've been watching you fight something alone that's been killing you, a little at a time. And you still think I'm better off in the dark? He froze. She leaned toward him, her voice barely above a whisper. Let me in. His eyes closed for a long moment, and when he opened them again, the walls were lower, thinner, fragile. I was targeted, he said quietly. Not by mistake. Someone wanted me gone. Permanently. She didn't breathe. They planted a bomb under my car. I survived, but... He touched his ribs weakly. My body didn't. And the ones who did it are still out there. I built this room because I don't know how long I have before they try again. Shock rippled through her. And now they're after me because I'm married to you, he said, voice rough. Because they think you matter to me? Her heart stuttered. Do I? Adrian stared at her, really stared as if the question had cornered him. Finally, he whispered, more than I ever wanted you to. Something inside her unraveled, soft and painful. She lowered her forehead to his, breathing him in gently, then stopped trying to face everything alone. He didn't move, didn't pull away. Instead, his trembling hand lifted to her cheek, thumb brushing a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Lila, he breathed, I've already pulled you too close. The room dimmed slowly, lights shifting into night mode. Outside, the city glowed like a field of stars. And just when the fragile calm settled around them, Hera's voice interrupted, no distortion this time, only urgency. Motion detected, level 70, unknown source approaching. Adrian's eyes snapped open. He gripped Lila's hand, breath steadying despite the pain. They're not stopping, he murmured. And he knew this time they weren't coming for him. They were coming for her. Hera's warning cut through the quiet like a blade. Motion detected, level 70, unknown source approaching. Adrian was already pulling himself upright, ignoring the sharp wince that carved through his expression. Lila reached for him instinctively. Stop your shoulder, I'm fine, he muttered, breath shallow. We need to move. He tried to stand. His legs buckled. Lila caught him before he hit the floor, her heart lurching. You're not going anywhere like this. Adrian gripped the edge of the bed, eyes blazing with desperate focus. If they breach this floor, they'll come straight for you. I'm not letting that happen. The lights flickered overhead. The entire penthouse vibrated, the hum of machinery shifting into a deeper, heavier rumble. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. Real ones, not reflections, not the tricks of glass. Someone was inside the penthouse. Adrian Lila's voice broke. He cupped the back of her head, pressing her forehead to his. I'm not losing you. Before she could respond, he pulled her into the hidden service hallway behind room 17. The narrow space lit up the moment it recognized his fingerprint. The door sealed shut behind them, muffling the sound of distant movement. Stay behind me, he whispered, but he was already gasping, one hand pressed to his ribs, fighting to stay upright. The hallway led them to a junction left toward the panic room, right toward the main living area. The lights flickered again. Adrian hissed a curse. System breach. They're trying to override everything. The thudding footsteps grew louder. Not one intruder, several. He turned to the panic room door and slapped his palm against the panel. The lock engaged with a heavy metallic thud. Hera, he commanded, lock all access points. Locking the AI responded, but its voice glitched. Error. Intrusion on emergency channel. Override it, he snapped. Another error message crackled. Then a new sound hit the air, a metallic clang against the panic room door. Someone was trying to get in. Adrian shifted immediately, placing himself between Lila and the door. Lila, listen to me. Stay down. Stay away from the entrance. She shook her head fiercely. I'm not leaving you. You're not leaving. You're staying alive, he growled. He reached into the storage compartment and pulled out a defensive baton and a stun device. If they get this door open, they won't, she whispered, voice trembling. He met her eyes, and for a brief moment the world softened. His hand rose to her cheek, thumb brushing lightly under her eye. I was never afraid of dying, he said softly. Until you. The pounding on the door intensified. A jagged crack appeared at the lock. Adrian tightened his grip on the baton. Step back. No. Lila. If you go out there alone, you'll die. You can barely breathe right now. He hesitated. just enough for her to grab his arm. If you fight with me. For a second, he stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. Then he nodded once, slow and reluctant. The door gave way with a deafening crack. Two masked figures surged in. Adrian moved instantly, slamming the baton into the first intruder's arm, sending the man's weapon clattering. The second lunged toward Lila. She grabbed the nearest object she could reach, a metal flashlight, and swung with every ounce of fear and adrenaline inside her. It hit the intruder's jaw with a sickening thud. He stumbled. Adrian stepped between them a split second later, catching the man's counterattack with his shoulder, his injured shoulder. The pain ripped across his face, but he didn't stop. He drove forward, using the stun device to drop the second intruder to the ground. But the first wasn't down. He rushed Adrian from behind. Lila screamed. Adrian spun, barely blocking the blow, but his breathing faltered. His grip weakened. The baton slipped from his hand. The intruder reached for a blade. Lila didn't think she threw herself forward, slamming her shoulder into the attacker. He hit the wall, stunned long enough for Adrian to seize the baton again and knock him unconscious with a final desperate strike. Silence fell, harsh, broken breathing, sweat and fear in the air. Lila's chest heaved as she stared at Adrian. He was pale, shaking blood seeping through the bandages on his shoulder. "Are you?" she began. He didn't answer. He stumbled once, twice, then collapsed into her arms. She lowered him gently to the floor, tears blurring her vision. Adrian, stay with me. Please." His eyes fluttered open just enough for him to find her face. A weak smile tugged at his lips. "See," he whispered. "I told you. As long as you're safe." His head dropped against her shoulder. Lila held him tightly, her hands trembling as alarms blared around them and the guards rushed in from the corridor. But she didn't let go. Not this time. Not ever. Lila refused to step back even as the guards helped carry Adrian into room 17. Her hands clung to him until the very last second, and when they laid him on the medical bed, she pressed her palm to his trembling chest as if anchoring him to consciousness. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please." Dr. Patel burst into the room moments later, his face tightening the instant he saw the blood soaking through Adrian's bandages. He moved quickly, issuing orders she barely heard, but she never once released Adrian's hand. For the first time since she'd arrived at the penthouse, she wasn't scared of the glass walls or the cold lights. She was scared of losing him. Hours passed in tense silence as the doctor worked. Lila fetched towels, passed instruments, held bandages in place, anything to keep her hands busy so she wouldn't fall apart completely. Finally, Dr. Patel exhaled. "He's stable for now, but you need to keep him calm. He can't afford another adrenaline spike." Lila nodded, her throat tight. "I'll take care of him." The guards left. The doctor left. The room dimmed to a soft blue glow, leaving only the steady beep of the heart monitor. She sat beside him, brushing her fingers through his hair. He looked impossibly tired, too pale, too fragile for a man who had been fighting so fiercely only hours ago. After a long time, Adrian stirred. His eyelids fluttered before his gaze, unfocused at first, found her. "Lila." A wave of relief crashed over her. "I'm here," she whispered. "You're okay. You scared me to death." Adrian tried to sit up, pain flooding his expression. She stopped him with a gentle hand on his chest. "No, don't move." He let out a breath, sinking back into the pillows. The vulnerability on his face undid her completely. "Did they hurt you?" he asked, voice hoarse. "They didn't touch me," she whispered. "Because of you." His hand reached blindly until it found hers. His fingers curled around her, like he needed proof she wasn't a dream. "Good. That's good." She swallowed hard. "Why do you always think my safety matters more than yours?" He didn't answer, not immediately. Instead, he let his thumb drag slowly over her knuckles, as if grounding himself on the feeling of her skin. "Because it does." Her heart caught. "Adrian." "I told myself not to care," he murmured. "It was easier. I thought distance would protect you, but distance only made it worse." Lila's breath trembled. "You can't keep pushing me away and pulling me close at the same time. I can't handle that." His hand tightened around hers. "I know." He turned his head slightly enough for their eyes to meet. For once, there was no wall, no mask, no coldness, only a quiet ache. "I care about you more than I should," he whispered. Her heart squeezed painfully. "Then stop pretending you don't." Silence settled over them, soft, warm, fragile. He blinked slowly, his defenses falling away. "I didn't want you to see me like this. Weak. Wounded." "You're not weak," she said, her voice fierce. "You're the strongest person I've ever met. But you don't have to carry everything alone." A faint, tired smile curved his lips. "I've never had someone say that to me." "Then hear me now," she said. "Let me stay. Let me help you. Let me care about you." He closed his eyes briefly, as if absorbing her words. When he opened them again, something had changed. His gaze, warmer, softer, almost reverent. "Lila," he murmured, "I don't want you to go." Her breath caught. "I'm not going anywhere." He shifted slightly, fighting pain to lift a hand to her cheek. She leaned into it instinctively, the warmth of his palm melting every shard of fear inside her. "You're not scared of me anymore," he whispered. She shook her head gently. "No, I'm scared of losing you." Something in his expression broke like ice thawing. He moved his fingers to the back of her neck, guiding her closer until their foreheads touched. His breath warmed her lips. His voice trembled. "I'm falling for you," he admitted quietly. Her chest tightened painfully. "I think I already fell." He let out a shaky breath, eyes closing. "God, I've wanted you in my arms since the first night, but I kept thinking I didn't deserve it, that bringing you close would destroy you." "And now," she asked softly. "And now," he whispered, "I'm tired of pushing away the only person who makes this place feel like a home." She brushed her thumb over his jaw. "Then let me stay." He nodded slowly, leaning into her touch. Stay. It was a promise, fragile but real. Later that night, she made soup in the penthouse kitchen, the first meal ever cooked there, she suspected. Adrian watched from the bed, propped up by pillows, a faint smile tugging at his lips as she returned with the bowl. She fed him slowly, and every time her fingers brushed his lips, his gaze softened, something warm flickering beneath the surface. After he finished, she wiped a stray drop from the corner of his mouth. His hand rose to catch her wrist, holding it gently. "You make everything hurt less," he said. "And you make me braver," she replied. He exhaled, closing his eyes, letting her hand rest against his cheek. For the first time, the penthouse didn't feel cold. The glass walls didn't feel like prison bars. They felt still, quiet, warm, safe. As Lila curled beside him, her fingers intertwined with his, Adrian whispered one final sentence before sleep pulled him under. "I'll end this, all of it, so you can live without fear." And Lila, with her head on his shoulder and her heart finally steady, knew he meant every word. Adrian woke before dawn, long before Lila stirred beside him. The city outside was a muted blur of blue and silver quiet, and half asleep. He brushed a strand of hair from her chaluhik, memorizing the soft rise and fall of her breathing. For a moment he allowed himself to simply exist in the warmth she'd brought into his life, a warmth he'd never expected to feel again. Then he slid out of bed. He moved quietly, carefully, fighting the ache pulsing through his ribs and shoulder. Every breath hurt, but the decision in his chest was carved in iron. He opened his laptop, entered a long string of encrypted codes, and pulled up a black screen interface filled with names, locations, and surveillance logs. The men who had attacked them weren't strangers. They were part of the same group that tried to kill him 2 years ago. And they would keep coming, not for him, but for her. Adrian selected the name at the top of the list, the man responsible, and hit enter. Then he wrote a note and placed it beside Lila's pillow. He left the penthouse without making a sound. When Lila awoke and found the empty space next to her, panic punched straight through her chest. She found the note quickly written in the same precise handwriting Adrian used on contracts. "Don't follow me. You're the only thing I have left to protect." Her hands shook as she pressed it to her chest. "No," she whispered. "Adrian, please, not alone." Before she could think twice, she ran to the security lobby. The elevator panel was disabled, locked by his clearance, but the screen flickered, then lit up with a video feed. Adrian in the parking structure surrounded. Her heart dropped. "Hira, take me there now," warning. The AI responded calmly, entering the restricted zone. Increases your risk of harm. I don't care. Open the service lift. There was a pause, then a soft chime. Service lift unlocked. Lila sprinted inside. The ride down felt endless. The moment the doors opened, cold air and concrete hit her face. Shadows flickered. Men in dark clothing circled Adrian, who stood in the center of the garage, posture steady despite the tremor in his injured arm. One of them laughed. You're alone, Hale, and we only need the girl. Adrian's jaw clenched. You'll never touch her. The man smirked. You think you can stop us? Look at you. You can barely stand. The second the man raised his weapon, Lila screamed, Adrian. Adrian turned just enough to see her rushing out from behind a pillar. Terror flashed across his face. Lila, go back. But she was already running toward him. The gunman adjusted his aim toward her. Adrian lunged, ignoring every signal of pain his body sent, and slammed into the attacker, knocking the weapon away. The other two rushed him, fists and boots in fury colliding in a violent blur. Lila grabbed a metal emergency wrench from the wall, her hands trembling, and hurled it at one of the attackers. It struck him hard in the shoulder. He turned toward her with a snarl, but Adrian was faster. He tackled the man, knocking him flat before gasping as pain ripped through his chest. Lila threw herself toward Adrian, shielding him with her body as the last attacker raised a weapon again. Don't you dare touch him, she cried. The man lunged, but a deafening shout cut through the garage. Drop it. Security swarmed in from every direction, Adrian's team armed and relentless. They pinned the attackers to the ground. A guard grabbed the weapon and secured it. Loud commands echoed until everything went painfully still. Lila knelt beside Adrian, her hands shaking as she cupped his face. Adrian, look at me. Look at me. His breathing was harsh, shallow, but his eyes stayed fixed on hers. Why didn't you stay safe? He rasped. Because you are my safe, she whispered. I'm not leaving you. Ever. His eyes softened just barely before his strength finally gave out, and he collapsed into her arms. Later, after the authorities took the attackers away and the guards cleared the area, Lila sat on the edge of the penthouse bed with Adrian leaning against her shoulder, exhausted but alive. The doctor had patched him again. His hand rested over hers, warm and steady. You scared me, she whispered. You terrify me every second you're in danger, he murmured. But you still ran after me. Of course I did. Adrian turned his head, brushing his lips softly against her temple. I've spent 2 years preparing for the next attack, but no amount of planning prepared me for you. She smiled, tears filling her eyes. And now, he whispered, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure nothing ever touches you again. Lila lay her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his healing heart. For the first time since stepping into the cold glass tower, she felt home. Not the penthouse. Him. Their fingers intertwined, fitting together as if they'd always known how. Outside the glass walls, the sunrise melted into gold. Inside, Adrian kissed the top of her head and pulled her closer, as if he'd finally allowed himself to stop fighting the one thing that had terrified him most. Love. And how far he would go for it, and how far she would go for him. A new beginning settled around them like warm light. They weren't alone anymore. They never would be again. If you've made it all the way here with them, thank you for staying through every moment, every heartbeat, every twist, every breath of their story. If you felt something along the way, even just a little, I'd love to know which part stayed with you. Your like, your comment, your presence here, each one means more than you know, and helps this little channel grow into a place for more stories like this. And if you'd like to stay for the next journey, you're always welcome to subscribe and keep reading with me. There are many more love stories waiting for you.